and we will come to him and make our home with him. In that one verse, Jesus is trying to say, I just need people who obey me. If they obey me, I'll be so pleased with them that me and my Father will come and make a home with them. Think about it. God saying that me and my Father are coming down to your home and we will make our home at your home would be like, I'm really pleased with you. I'm so pleased with your obedience in my life. Classic example of obedience. Every time I think of obedience, I have two people in my mind. Always they just pop up. Imagine yourself in Noah's time. In Genesis chapter 6, you will find the beginning of those verses talk about the kind of things that are happening around the world. The world was full of wickedness and everybody was doing as they want. There was one verse which says, the world has spoiled so much that every inclination of human thought, imagination, is full of evil. It was so much evil, from heaven God looks down to the earth and says, why have I made this earth? He was so angry. At first it was pain as he saw people having evil in their lives. Then this pain turned into anguish. This anguish turned into this anger. Anger turned into this furor that he decides, I'm going to destroy everything that is on the earth. Whether it is on the earth, under the earth, above the heavens, I don't care. I'm going to destroy everything. Verses 1 to 7 show the anger of God. By the time you come to 8, chapter 6, 8, it says, but Noah found favor in the eyes of God. Have you ever seen a storm that is so huge that makes you want to hide somewhere? The sound is heavy and it's chaos, and then there comes a sudden silence. So peaceful it is. You know, whenever I read Genesis chapter 6, that's what I feel. Verses 1 to 7 is this anger of God, and then verse 8. But Noah found favor in the eyes of God. I always thought, why would Noah find favor in the eyes of God? What made him find favor in the eyes of God is, you will find in 2 verses, I'll come to that. But imagine, in this place, God comes to Noah and asks him, you are the only guy I could find who is a little different, who is without any sin in your life. I'd like you to do something. You say, I'm going to send a flood into this world. If you were in Noah's shoes, I can imagine a question mark popping on your head. What did you say? I'm going to send a flood. Flood. What do you mean by flood? We know what is a tsunami. What would he know about a flood? He doesn't even probably see the rain at the time. He would have thought, what do you mean by flood? And that flood, and you know, God doesn't even take time to explain it to him. In fact, he gets into this enlisting thing that he starts on saying, I'm going to send a flood, so you need to do a job. Your job is to build a ship. Ship? What do you mean by ship? Would probably his next question. He has never heard of a ship. For us, ship is a normal thing, but a boat is a normal thing. Now God is telling him, I want you to build a ship, and this ship has to look like this. It has to have this many rooms. It has to have this many floors. This is the kind of wood you need to use. This is how you need to shape it. And this guy is writing down everything, not even understanding one single thing. In this furiousness, what are you saying? I don't understand. And then after he finishes, God just pops out and says, do it. Do you know what Bible says? In Genesis chapter 6, verses 22, it says, but Noah did just as God commanded him to do. I went for the Greek word, Hebrew word for that. Just as, that Hebrew word that is used there simply means he did not do anything more than what was asked of him, anything less than what was asked of him. This guy probably had never heard what is a flood. He doesn't know what does a ship look like, but will do exactly as God commanded him to do. I think that's the mark of obedience is. Obedience does not mean you tell me, if I understand, I do it. Obedience means you tell me, even if I don't understand, I will still do it. That's the kind of people I think God is trying to look for in this world. That's the kind of people I believe God is looking for, who can make a difference in this world that is around them. The other guy you will find is Hosea. The moment I think of obedience, I think he would be the classic example of a life of obedience. Here is an young preacher who probably is well respected in his country because Israelites love prophets. You know, they respect prophets a lot because they bring God's word to them. And at a time when there is so much turmoil, you would obviously expect people to respect their pastors. Probably is one of those guys who is most successful because Hosea almost lived through 40 years. If you look at Hosea's lifespan, he almost lived through 30 to 40 years of ministry. And in that he would have seen at least 7 kings changed. So he had a long time. He probably was well respected among all the people of his time. Here is Hosea, God comes to him and he asks him, I'm just imagining the story. I know you find only bits and pieces of Hosea's story, but let me take you to that land. And imagine Hosea is praying one day and God comes to him and says, Hosea, I'm really pleased with you. I'm going to give you a job. Yes, God, whatever you want. And he would ask him, just why don't you look out of your window? What do you see out of your window? So Hosea walks up to the window and looks out of the window, and there across the street sees a woman, talks back to God and says, God, I see a woman, but you know, she's not a nice woman, she's a prostitute. I know that, you don't have to tell me that. But I'd like you to do something. Get out of your home, go to that woman, and get married to her. I always thought, if I was pastoring a church, and I had this huge congregation that is bulging, and then God comes to me and tells me, I'd like you to do something. Just go to a brothel house and get married to a prostitute. What would I say? I'd be like, oh, are you sure you're making sense? I mean, do you know what you're asking me to do? Probably that's the question I would pop back to God. But Hosea walked out of the home, went to Gomer, married her, brought her home. You would find in the following story that she had 3 children with him. And then she decides, enough of being a prophet's wife, I think my prostitution was much better, and she walks out on him. Goes back to the same job. In fact, she goes to a businessman, sells herself as a sex slave. Then God comes to him. Here is Prophet Hosea, who would have been already lost his prestige, already lost his reputation as a pastor. Probably his next Sunday morning, his congregation would have disappeared from the church, and he would probably have empty pews in front of him. And then God comes to him and says, I'd like to ask you something. Yes, God, what do you want? Can you enlist, how much property do you have? Is that a question to ask somebody who is actually struggling with the infidelity of his wife, whom he got married to because God asked him to get married to? And God doesn't even bother to talk to him. He would simply ask him, can you tell me how much property do you have? And Hosea would list him, saying, I have this much home, this much gold, and this much silver. God looks at him and says, sell everything that you have, go to that businessman, give your money to her, and take your wife back and marry her all over again. I would always think, if Hosea had told enough, God, do you know how much pain I'm going through? Can't you understand how much pain I'm going through? Can you just leave me alone? I'm sure God would have left him alone. I'm sure God would have understood. I'm sure God would have said, all right, let me pick up somebody else to do the job. But Hosea would leave his children there, go and sell everything that he has, and take his wife back. In fact, for the next few chapters, we will find that God made Hosea to go through that purposefully because he wanted to teach something to Israelites, how much he loves them, Israelites. But I thought about Hosea. I put myself in Hosea's shoes. And I was thinking, what would I do if I was Hosea? How much pain I would be going through at that moment of time, and God is actually asking me to do some things that I've never imagined. In fact, I love Hosea.